Today our focus is going to be on triangles. We're going to classify them according to their angles or according to their sides. This should hopefully be familiar to you, that you've seen it before. So let's talk about the first three terms you can see on the page are acute triangle, right triangle, or obtuse triangle. So the first one, acute. You guys know we've talked about an acute angles. They're angles less than 90 degrees. So an acute triangle, therefore, has angles, three acute angles. Okay, so to draw a picture of them, that's probably most familiar to you. So just something that has three acute angles. So there's two triangles, and if you look, all of the angles, 1, 2, and 3 in each one, are less than 90 degrees. Okay, so looking at a right triangle, so we know that a right triangle has angles. It has what kind of an angle? A right angle. So it's a triangle with one right angle. Okay, so think about what that would look like. So you start with a right angle and then draw your third side. And we always show that there's a right angle by putting that little box in, so that that's the right angle one, because obviously my drawings aren't perfect. Okay, next thing, obtuse triangle. Whoops. An obtuse triangle, therefore, what do you think you know about an obtuse triangle? Well, it's a triangle with what kind of an angle? And it can only have one obtuse angle. Okay, so a triangle with one obtuse angle. So think about if you just start with drawing an obtuse angle, so an angle larger than 90 degrees, and then connect those, then you end up with an obtuse triangle. Okay, so looking at what we've done so far, we've talked about an acute triangle, a right triangle, and an obtuse triangle. These all had to do with angles. So these all had to do with angle measure. And that's one way to classify triangles, is by their angle measure. Okay, so then moving down, if you look at the next three, equilateral, isosceles, and scalene, these three all have to do with the side length. So it's the length of the sides that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so an equilateral triangle, so the root word, if you think of equal, what do you know about an equilateral triangle? It has three equal sides, or three congruent sides, and three congruent angles. As you can see, I have little note-taking shortcuts. So all three sides have to be the exact same length, and we're going to show that by I'm going to put little marks through all three sides. And then all three angles are the same. So I'm going to put one angle mark through each of those. Okay, so then an isosceles triangle, what do you know about the sides? So this has to do with sides. So in an isosceles triangle, hopefully you know that it has two congruent sides. And what you'll learn later and prove later in geometry is that it will also have two congruent angles. So these two sides are equal, but then the third one here is a little bit shorter. So those two are equal, and if those two are equal, then the two angles here are equal. Or you might have one that's really spread out, like this. So this is an obtuse angle at the top. These two sides are the same, and then these two angles are congruent to each other. So that's a way that isosceles triangles can look. And then the last one, the scalene. So equilateral, three equal sides, isosceles, two equal sides, so scalene, no congruent sides. So no sides congruent. Okay, and therefore no angles are congruent or equal. So if this side is like 3, this side might be 4, and this side might be 5. Okay, moving on. Then at the bottom you'll see triangle sum theorem, and we're going to talk about that more in class. But there it is, something to highlight or maybe put a star by, that we're going to talk about that some more tomorrow. 7.3 continues with angles and triangles. So go ahead and let's look at this. Label each triangle according to its angle measures and its side lengths. So you can see at the top, so if you look at the notes from the page 4, acute, right, and obtuse talks about its angle length, or its angles, measures, and equilateral, isosceles, and scalene are according to the sides. And the bad thing is these triangles aren't labeled very well, so this one, if you'll put 2 marks like this to show that we want that one to look like 2 sides are the same, so we're going to call that, if 2 sides are the same length, we're going to call that isosceles. And then looking at all the angles, do any of them look obtuse or right? And if they're not, if you don't have an obtuse angle or a right angle, then we're going to call it acute. Okay, so looking at number 2. All of the angles are acute. And then the sides, it looks scalene to me. I don't have any way to know that those are exactly the same without measuring them, so I'm going to call it scalene, since it's not marked. The next one, we're going to put markings on these 3 like that. Looking at angle measures first, this angle's acute, this is acute, this is acute. And we know that if those 3 are equal, those 3 angles are equal. This is called equilateral then, and acute. Okay, paging down to the next one, looking at angle measure, I see this angle right here looks obtuse to me. You could always hold a note card up to it or the corner of your paper and it will be greater than 90 degrees. So we're going to say it's obtuse because of that one angle right there. And then this side is not the same as this side, and it's not the same as this side. So you can see my 1 mark, 2 marks, and 3 marks show that they're all different lengths. So this one's obtuse and then scalene. Okay, number 2 on this page, put a mark here like that. That means that has a 90-degree angle, so looking at the angles we would say this is a right triangle. And then looking at the lengths of the sides, they're all different, so I would say it is scalene. And then the last one, this right here, is obtuse and scalene because all 3 sides are different lengths. And that's it. So that is the end of the video for tonight. If you have any questions, you can rewind. We'll come back to class tomorrow and talk more about triangles and their angle sums and work on that. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.